I'll say this. Sparty stands alone. You see, we balanced it out. Last week it was Michigan stands alone. Now Michigan State half game up in the Big Ten standings. We believe in objectivity and balance here on I'll Say This. And obviously we are going to talk very much about Michigan State's victory on the road in Chrysler Center against the Michigan Wolverines on Friday night. But welcome into the program. I am Chris Castellani, obviously. If you enjoy this show, you can find us on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to listen to us in audio form, go to Apple Podcasts. You can go to Spotify. Let us know what you think of the show. And you can find all of our content at castellanicontent.com. There's the one-stop shop for everything we post. Michigan basketball videos, obviously. We're getting pretty deep into the season. If you want to get caught up on all of those, you can go to that site, click on Michigan basketball post games, and you'll find everything that we've done up to this point in the season. All right, let's talk about it. Michigan falls on Friday night in a huge game against Michigan State at Chrysler Center. They lose by 13 at home. Michigan State now currently a half game up on Michigan in the Big Ten standings, so they have played one more game. These teams will obviously see each other again at the end of the season, and you got to think at least for one of these teams, there's going to be a championship on the line. So there's still a lot of basketball left to be played, but let's talk about this game. Look, I'm a Michigan fan. I've experienced tremendous highs in this rivalry. I've experienced tremendous lows in this rivalry, and it was on paper, it was very fun to see how meaningful this game was. Like, I thought the energy at Chrysler Center was great. You're talking about two top 15 teams that are at the very top of the Big Ten. I brought it up a few weeks ago, but it felt like the good old days again. And right before the game, Michigan decides they're going to give Dusty May a contract extension and a bit of a bump in salary. Very well deserved. He's done a remarkable job. I'm not going to give myself credit necessarily, but I kind of called this. If you go back to the conversation I had with Rieger and even some episodes I did on this show a few weeks back, I had a feeling it was kind of heading that way. And I think that Michigan wanted to avoid having any sort of doubt this offseason that Dusty May might not return. The only place he would have gone was Indiana. And even then, I don't think it was really possible, but they locked him down. He's here to stay. And he's going to continue to do a fine job. But on Friday, it was Michigan State that outlasted Michigan. Like I said, I've experienced highs, I've experienced lows in this rivalry. This one, well, not a fun one, right? I prefer my team win. The way that Michigan lost this game, I felt like was very much in line with how I figured they could lose this game. And I felt like Michigan State just straight up beat them, as opposed to a problem that Michigan's had at points this year, which is where they've beaten themselves. Now, I'm not going to act like Michigan played a flawless floor game and avoided turnovers and stuff like that. There was still, a lot of inconsistency offensively. They still really badly got out-rebounded, which is kind of uncharacteristic considering their size and their length. I think Michigan State just really brought the aggressiveness. I feel like similar to how whoever wins the running game wins this game usually in football. I feel like whoever wins the rebounding game is usually going to win this game in basketball. But beyond that, I felt like Michigan came into the game a little bit rough. They found themselves down 8 early, and I was getting kind of scared because I have seen in this rivalry when Michigan gets blown out, Michigan State will bring their A game to a point where they just smother Michigan, and every single possession feels impossible. Just to get a single shot off is almost a miracle. And early on in this game, I didn't think Michigan was running their offense super effectively. They settled in. They ended up taking a 7-point lead. They started hitting their shots, and they went into halftime up 4. And I wasn't feeling great about it for a couple of reasons. One, having a halftime lead against Tom Izzo means very little to me. I'm never going to feel comfortable in that particular case. And two, I felt like, especially considering they were playing at home, Michigan had a few opportunities, whether it was missed threes, but even beyond that, missed fucking free throws, man, to go up potentially by as much as double digits. And while there's still a high possibility Michigan State comes back and wins this game, I feel like when you are playing at home, the best thing that you can do is turn up the pressure, and in turn, the crowd will turn up the volume, and it's harder to adjust on the road. I feel like Michigan let MSU hang around a little bit in that first half. They came out hot in the second half, took a lead, and never really looked back. The way Michigan State won this game, like I said at the beginning, was kind of how I figured they could, which is I felt like their depth just got the better of Michigan. And we'll talk about what it means for Michigan in a second. But in terms of MSU, I felt like in the early part of the game, they were settling for jump shots. This is not a great outside shooting team. It's not really a great shooting team in general, but it's where the depth becomes so important for them, because I just generally felt like Michigan while they brought tremendous effort and energy throughout most of the game, simply got worn down by Michigan State's depth in the second half of this game. And that's something that we've seen really throughout the entire Big Ten season, is that when you have a team and a coach that's comfortable playing 10 different guys, and you look at a Michigan team that I think, once you get beyond Will Cheddar, Roddy Gale's going to play a lot. I don't know if you can trust him necessarily at this point. You're going to bring guys who are going to bring a remarkable energy. And I think one of the things that is very likable about this team is that you never question effort. You never question the fact that they're always willing to adapt and listen. But you saw a Michigan State team that you felt like just simply outlasted Michigan in that game on Friday. And then you had a few instances of stuff that you couldn't exactly prepare for. Trey Holloman, for the second time this year, gets crazy hot from beyond the arc, hits 3 straight threes at one point. And really the biggest difference, not just in this game, but I would argue throughout the entire Big Ten season, has been the emergence of Jace Richardson, because I came into this year expecting Michigan State to be good. Now, by the standards of Michigan State, that means they'd make the tournament, probably win a game in the tournament. And many of these players have been where I thought they'd be at this point in the year. I figured Jay Nakins would have a good year. He's a senior, 1,000-point scorer. I knew Trey Holloman was good. I figured Jeremy Fears would step right in and provide some good guard play for Michigan State. I knew Frankie Fiddler would be solid, coming off the bench as a transfer. But none of us expected Jace Richardson to emerge as quickly as he has, and he kept Michigan State in that game in the first half, and pretty much just took over, him and Trey Holloman, in the second half. And like, as a freshman, a lot of these guys come in on campus with remarkable talent, but I think it's the control that he's able to maintain when he has the ball in his hands that makes him so impressive. Because you see these freshmen sometimes that are so used to coming out of high school, coming out of AAU, where they're just more talented than everybody else, and they can take guys one-on-one. You give them isolation, they can drive to the basket, hit the outside shot, what have you. And you get into the Big Ten, defenses are tougher, teams defensively are communicating a lot better. And the fact that Jace Richardson doesn't just put his head down and barrel his way into people, the fact that he can pass, he can slash, he is an enormous weapon, and is really the biggest reason why this Michigan State team finds themselves at the top of the Big Ten standings. They were going to be a good team regardless, but I don't know if any prognosticator could have predicted that he would be this much of a revelation at this point in his freshman season. I brought up the rebounding a minute ago, and while Michigan's bigs played fine, I mean, Danny Wolf, I don't know if he had a double-double, but very close to a double-double, had some huge moments in the first half. Vlad Golden with over 20 points. He played a very good game, but I think what this came down to is the fact that Michigan State's guards just simply outplayed Michigan's guards. Trey Donaldson did not have one of his better games. In fact, it was one of his weakest games of the season. You combine that with the fact that on the other end, you had Trey Holloman, who just took over from beyond the arc in the second half. And it ends up with Michigan losing this game by double digits. Now, of course, Michigan State owns the tiebreaker. These teams will play again at the end of the regular season. And I talked about it in my post-game video afterwards, but I'll bring it up here. Look, there's really no other way to look at it. Michigan State was the better team on Friday. I don't think it's a throw it in the trash game necessarily. I mean, there's stuff that you can learn from that. Look, they lost to a top 10 team. I mean, and I hate going with the whole, what at the beginning of the season, we didn't think they'd be there. Well, we didn't, right? But it was a game that was on the schedule. We wanted to win it, right? Michigan had a golden opportunity, no pun intended, and, kind of let it slip away. They got outplayed. At the same time, I'm not viewing this as the David versus Goliath matchup that I have seen in the past between Michigan and Michigan State. Michigan will go to Breslin and play them on March 9th. Do I think Michigan State wins that game? Yes, because unless they're playing somebody that is just that good, I'm almost 99% of the time inclined to pick Michigan State to win in the Breslin, right? And especially if it's senior day and there's a championship potentially on the line, like, it's going to be scary. I still believe a better version of Michigan not saying they will, can beat this Michigan State team. There's been certain instances, 2009, 2016, where I felt like had these teams played each other 100 times, it would have been State every single day of the week. They just had more talent. They had more depth. They were more well coached. This is one of those instances where I look at this game and I say, okay, Michigan State was better. But I don't think Trey Donaldson's going to play as bad when they play each other at the Breslin. I don't know if Trey Holloman's going to get as red hot from three-point range as he did in the second half. And is Jace Richardson going to put up another 20-something point game? I don't know. I think Michigan will adjust, and they'll have a closer game at the Breslin in March. Now, it's still a brutal loss, and in terms of what it means for the Big Ten standings, I mean, Michigan State now completely controls their own destiny. But Michigan is not out of the woods. They're still playing for a lot, and I don't think and it's where I give this team a lot of credit with the way they've responded to their losses this year. I don't think there's any sort of demoralization. I mean, shit, Vlad Golden proposed to his girlfriend right after the game. So, I mean, it seemed like, not to say they let it roll off their backs, but I think that they're going to turn the page, and they're going to go to Nebraska knowing full well that their goals are still very much in front of them. They're going to be in the postseason. But yeah, as a whole, Sparty wins this round for sure. And I shouldn't even bring this up, but I will just for the sake of it. I think I'm giving a relatively measured take. Michigan State is in a great place as a team right now. I think Michigan's in a very good place as a team right now. These are two teams that have a whole lot of strengths. They're two teams that have weaknesses that can be exploited as well. Michigan just gave a first-year coach an extension. That's pretty rare to do. I think he's going to do a remarkable job. I think he has done a remarkable job. As far as Tom Izzo is concerned, the record, the pedigree speaks for itself. I do still find it so weird how there is a large collection of people, and I'm not talking about, somebody in high school. I mean, like adults on social media, that I think the only sporting event they watch a year is Michigan versus Michigan State in either football or basketball. And they judge the state of an entire program based on those particular games. My whole thing that I find bizarre, this is just how I operate, it's how I work, and maybe it makes me pretentious and wrong, I don't know, is the fact that, like, if you beat a team, I've never found it particularly enjoyable to be like, oh, I guess that team just sucks. Like, beating Ohio State in football is fun because they're always really good. I have seen Michigan lose to that game many times. I've seen them win that game 4 years in a row, and it's way more fun to win because every time they've done it, Ohio State's been great. This is one of those instances where, like, I feel like, in a weird way, if Michigan State goes on the road and beats a top 15 Michigan team, if you're then going on social media and saying, little sister, this team is soft, Dusty May sucks, Vlad Golden sucks, it's a team full of hacks, they shouldn't make the tournament, in a way, you're kind of doing a disservice to the team you root for, because the team you root for just did something very difficult. They went into a hostile environment and won. That's just how I roll with it. I understand it's fun to talk crap sometimes. I get it, but I think that what has made this rivalry very fun at points over the last, off and on over the last 10, 15 years is the fact that both teams come in with a solid pedigree. Both teams are playing for something, not just on that particular day, but both teams find themselves often playing for something in the second, sometimes even third weekend of March/April. So that's just my perspective on it. I think I am fighting an uphill battle here, because to try to explain logic to people who illogically focus on the Michigan State rivalry is a losing game, but I'm going to keep playing it. I'm looking at the clock here. We're about 13 minutes in. I'm probably going to edit a few things out. I want to make sure that I do this game justice, because it was a huge moment in the rivalry and a huge moment in the season. But I guess I take comfort in the fact that there was nothing particularly controversial about it. I didn't feel like the officiating was poor one way or the other. I mean, if there's any good that comes from losing by double digits, it's that, like, there's kind of no doubt. I can't really come on here and say, God, if they would have just scored on this possession, Michigan would have won. Like, no, if they would have scored on this possession and 6 others, maybe it would have been a tie game. I know a lot of people from a Michigan standpoint want me to come on here and dunk on Roddy Gale. Look, the thing about Roddy Gale is if you're going to have a player who is annoying, which he has a tendency to be often, I'd rather he be aggressively annoying than passively annoying. And like, he's going through it right now. I mean, Robbie Hummel brought up, he has 1 for his last 22 shooting threes. Now, I would argue at a certain point, coaches have to pull him aside and say, like, dude, let's maybe make a few in practice before you shoot anything from beyond the arc. But yeah, I think that does speak to, if you want to point fingers at Roddy Gale, point fingers at him. But I think it does speak to the fact that depth is a problem with this team. I think that Dusty has honed in on that. They've been trying to give LJ Kaysen more minutes. They've been trying to give Justin Pippen more minutes, hoping that one of those guys can emerge, because as we brought up in the past, as much as we like Will Cheddar, playing Will Cheddar with Vlad and Danny Wolf doesn't really make any sense. You've got to get some more production on the wings. Hopefully Kaysen can emerge. You got a few games left in the Big Ten season to kind of figure that out. All right, we'll move on here, and we are going to talk some Tiger baseball. Spring training is underway, and I got spring fever. Tigers are 2-0. In the spring. Now, if there's anything, I'll tell you what, and I've seen people care about this. if you want to take something out of spring, take something out of spring. Okay. There's obviously guys I pay attention to. I fall guilty to this every year. Every year I say to myself, don't take anything from spring. Don't take anything out of spring. And then I do. Okay. We're baseball fans. We're human beings. It's what we do. Right. At the same time, record in spring training is completely meaningless. Completely meaningless. But the Tigers do find themselves 2-0. And we're so amped and juiced up and excited for baseball that we're trying to find storylines, and we got to take into account, I mean, the sample size, even over an entire spring training, especially for pitchers, man, is so small. I mean, it's 2-3 innings at a time. But I will talk about the fact that one of the questions that needs to be answered in this month plus that is spring training is how the rotation is going to shape up. We know that they have 3 studs, right? Skubal, best pitcher in baseball, Jack Flaherty, and Reese Olson. That's a 1-2-3, and that is a legit 1-2-3 in front of the rotation guys. But Alex Cobb, who they signed in free agency for some reason, is injured and is going to miss the first month of the season. So you have a whole lot of M's. You have Mize, you have Manning, you have Montero, you have Madden, you have Maeda, and then you have potentially Sir Gibson Long as well. Am I leaving anybody out? I don't think I am. Well, Jackson Jobe, duh, potentially fighting for those last 2 rotation spots. So every time one of these guys takes the mound, we are going to watch them with something of a close lens. And we got a view of 3 of these guys over the weekend. We saw Kenta Maeda make his first outing of spring, and 2 innings looked pretty good. Fastball got up to 94, right? Some legit swing and miss. It seemed like he was controlling the strike zone better. 2 innings, people. And this is something I have to bring this up. And again, I fall guilty of buying into people's stuff in spring all the time. I'm not trying to lecture to anybody. Every pitcher's stuff looks good in spring. They're playing in warm weather. They haven't pitched in months. Sliders are going to slide better. Fastballs are going to be thrown harder. It's just the way things are going to look, right? At the same time, my hot take after 2 games of spring training, and I even felt this way before his debut in spring, Kenta Maeda has a better chance of making this rotation than people want to let on. I know that last year, I'm not going to say he found a home, but was better in that long relief role. That would still be my preferred spot for him. Like, I don't think that you can be penciling in Mize or Manning at this point solely based on upside. These are guys that are, I mean, they're almost veterans at this point, really. I mean, in terms of since they've been drafted, Manning was drafted in 16, Mize was drafted in 18. Like, the whole sheen of, hey, future ace, future, top player, that's really not the case anymore. And quite frankly, Kenta Maeda, while older, has had a longer track record of success in his career than either one of these guys have. And I think managers have a tendency to favor veterans too, just throwing something out there. And look, if he continues to have more outings like what he had on Saturday, he's going to make this rotation. And it might be to people's chagrin. But the fact is, you once again had Matt Manning coming in relief with a possibility to really, turn some heads. And he stunk. He stunk again. That is the one of all these guys that we're looking at this spring. He's the one to me that I feel like he is the farthest away from having a legitimate role on this baseball team. I think that his career peak was the 6-inning combined no-hitter, or he threw 6 innings of that combined no-hitter. Since then, they've given him chances, but injuries, inconsistency, the strikeout rate being low, and the fact that every time I see him in spring, he doesn't look good. That's a guy who's kind of got to prove it, and they bring him in kind of garbage time relief, and he wasn't very good. Then Casey Mize pitched on Sunday, 2 scoreless innings for him. People were paying attention to the fastball. It got up to 97, 98. I'm very split on, no pun intended, because he throws the splitter. I'm very split on where I stand on Casey Mize right now, because I was one of the people who last season came into the year saying, I think this guy's going to pitch some pretty good baseball. Like, I'm not saying people had given up on him, but I was saying, look, they need him to be a number 3 starter. I think he could be that. He can give them some innings. And I thought he started the year relatively well. And as the season went along before he got injured again, I felt like his stuff had diminished. He basically lost all confidence in his splitter, and he wasn't missing any bats. But I have seen some people, there's been some backlash to the backlash, so to speak, of people saying, hey, man, look, Mize was coming off of Tommy John a year ago, and there's going to be adjustments there. I would still maintain, look, he got Tommy John in like June of 2022. And I know it's difficult to come back from, but at a certain point, like, you just are the pitcher you are. But I think what is going to make this race for those final two rotation spots very intriguing is I don't think there's any legit favoritism that AJ has at this point. He's going to take the best guys. Now, the elixir here, the magical mystery box is Jackson Jobe, right? Because I think Jackson Jobe's stuff is going to be more explosive than anybody else's that I've mentioned so far. Sawyer Gibson Long, Mize, Manning, take your pick. But there's also the innings limit and the monitoring of those innings and how do you handle him. I've said for a long time now, the role that Jackson Jobe plays on the 2025 Tigers is going to be a very key role. He is going to be a key piece of this team at some point. I just don't know when that some point is going to be. Yeah, and I feel like in spring, man, so much of it turns into, hey, this guy did this yesterday and this guy did this yesterday. I think one guy, though, because he did homer on Sunday, I just want to bring him up. One guy I think has gotten very overlooked, even more so than somebody like Jace Young, who also had a good day yesterday, is Dylan Dingler. Like, Dingler, similar to Young, was called up last year at a point where all we were looking for was developmental at-bats, and then was thrust into the middle of a playoff chase. And by the time they got to the postseason, I mean, they barely even played. That was, Rodgers' role at catcher. And this is still a guy that they really believe in, and it's a catching platoon they still really believe in. They like the bat better than Jake Rogers' bat. I mean, I know Jake's got some pop, but let's be real. Those numbers are, offensively are typically pretty heinous and barely even a sample size to go off of from a year ago. I think that there's going to be somebody of these young guys, whether it's Jace Young, Justin Henry Malloy, Dylan Dingler. Keith got a full sample size last year, but you could throw Parker in there as well. One of these guys, I think, is going to pop off unexpectedly, because I think that the sample size and the circumstances in which they got high leverage at bats a year ago were not necessarily a proper way to judge how effective of a major league hitter they are going to be. So just something to keep an eye on. I think it's been a long time since we've had a really effective catching platoon here. I guess you could argue like Carson Kelly last year with Jake was something. But I think if you see Dingler emerge a little bit offensively, and you have potentially, a very good offensive, and I've heard he's graded out to be a good defensive catcher as well, and Dingler, and an elite defensive catcher in Rogers, you could have something there. I don't think they're asking for these guys to be Buster Posey. They just put them at the bottom of the lineup, hit for a little bit of power, and play good defense, and you can have a solid catching platoon between those two guys. One more thing that I want to talk about here is baseball's getting closer. That's great. We are almost out of the dead period. We're about to enter one of the best periods of sports throughout the entire season. We're almost into March. It's all great. Wonderful. I want to talk about the Detroit Pistons here because how do I word this? I am trying to be more diverse with not just my content, but more diverse with the teams that we discuss on here. And I think that not just in sports, but very often in life, I've been closed off to something because I say, I'm not going to like it or I can't do it. Why don't you try this? I don't know. I'm not going to like it. Eat this food. No, I'm not going to like it. Well, how do you know? You've never had it. I just know that I won't like it. You have to have an open mind to things. And I think for a very long time, whether it was because I felt like the NBA wasn't anything fun, which I still, there's a lot of debate about that right now, or I was just angry at how lethargic and boring the Pistons were. I feel like I very rarely gave them a chance. Now, in the few instances in which I did give them a chance, I mean, this is a team a year removed from a fucking 25-game losing streak or whatever. Like, I'm not going to act like they were some storied organization, but they cleaned house, and I have tried to, while I will never claim to be watching them as closely as I watch the Tigers or the Lions or Michigan, I want to give them a chance because people ask me all the time about hockey stuff, and it's not that I root against the Red Wings. In fact, I've been to Red Wings games. I root for them. I want good things for all Detroit teams. But, your formative years are very important. I didn't grow up in a hockey household. We didn't watch hockey. I didn't know anybody that played hockey, friends, family. It was just, it was something that I didn't really become cognizant of or aware of how big it was until a little bit later in life. But I knew the 9-year-old that sat in the basement and cried when the Pistons won the NBA championship in 2004, right? And so I got to believe that guy is still in there somewhere. And so I have been keeping up with the Pistons, not to a point where I feel confident breaking down the X's and O's and the plus minuses of these players or going player by player and talking about what they mean to the roster. But I've been watching them, and what's been weird is that there's a lot of positives that I take away. Cade Cunningham is spectacular. I mean, I always make the baseball analogies. He, to me, is the equivalent of that 5-tool center fielder, man. I mean, he can pass, he can shoot, he can slash. He's a stat sheet stuffer. Seems like a good leader as well. Seems like he's totally embraced Detroit. This is the first homegrown Pistons star that they've had since Grant Hill, right? I mean, because honestly, as much as I love Chauncey and Rip and those guys, I mean, they weren't, drafted here. Tayshaun never was drafted here, but he never reached the star levels. He never made an all-star team like, Cade did. So that's great to see. I think Trajan Langdon has done a wonderful job picking pieces up in free agency. Beasley's had a fine year. Tim Hardaway Jr.'s built a nice little career for himself playing here. That's great. That's fun. And they are winning. That's the most bizarre thing. At the end of the day, the casual fan cares about that. They check the box score. Hey, did they win? Okay, I might keep watching now. So they've been winning. They currently, a team a year removed from disaster, has a 94% chance of making the playoffs. That's fucking great. Thumbs up, everybody. Hugs and hand pounds. Great work, Pistons. And yet I watch them and I feel nothing. But what's frustrating is I don't want to feel nothing. I want to feel something. I want to get into this. I want to be on board this bandwagon. And I don't know what this is like, but I would imagine this is what it must be like to be in a loveless, sexless marriage, where it's like, look, I know that we've done some things to each other in the past, right? But we're trying to make it work. And in general, I think we're both in a better place, but I feel nothing when I'm with you. And it's very frustrating because I do love this sport of basketball. And there was a time where I adored and absolutely loved the Pistons. And I'm trying to, not just for the sake of content, but just for the sake of Detroit fandom, get back into it. And if I was watching it and they just stunk, that'd be one thing. Because aesthetically, that's just not pleasing, right? But I feel like I'm watching something that I won't put on par with the run the Tigers had a year ago, but is a tremendous step in the right direction. It seems like for the first time in fucking forever, there's actually smart people in the organization. TBD, right? I mean, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. There was a time where we thought Troy Weaver was the guy too, but we're seeing progression in the organization, and I want to feel excited. And maybe it's just the NBA product as a whole, but I just can't bring myself to feel that kind of joy that I've gotten from other teams. And it stinks because I feel like I'm not doing my job correctly, and it's not going to stop me from talking about them. Like, if they make the playoffs, we're going to do segments about them. I mean, I'd just be doing a disservice really to everyone if I didn't at least discuss it. But I feel like it would also be disingenuous if I came on here and acted like, yeah, I'm on board. Like I am authentic to a fault with my emotions. And I guess this is just the question I want to pose to the people out there is like, am I wrong for this? Is there in this particular aspect, is there something wrong with me? I'm not including other things in life. I just mean in this particular way, is my stance on this weird? Because I don't like that. I don't like being the kid in the Polar Express that can't hear the bell. I want to believe in Santa Claus again. But there's just something that in my heart that I feel like is missing, even though my head and my eyes acknowledge all the good things. It's just kind of a shoulder shrug for me. Just something I'm pointing out. I don't know. Kind of weird. All right. That will, I should probably do it for today's episode. We will be back with another episode of Chris and Company this week. It looks like Kenny Surwa. If you don't know that name, remember the knuckleballer free agent that the Tigers signed after he went viral in the offseason? That's him. We're going to be talking to him. That episode should be up this week. We're going to try to plan out a few Chris and Companies here over the next few weeks. I mean, the main goal over the next month is I want every Chris and Company episode to either be Tiger baseball related or Michigan and Michigan State basketball related. We got to strike when the iron's hot. Talk to Austin. I'm going to just, this is not set in stone necessarily, but I think we're going to try to do something for the Michigan State game in in Breslin. That is a Sunday game, and my schedule is going to kind of open up here over the next month, so it gives us an opportunity to do some unique things. So, yeah, we're going to try to expand with the content stuff, and First Watch is going to be coming down the pike here soon. Those take a little bit longer for Austin to work on. As always, I appreciate the job that Austin does for my content as he continues to make me look much better than I have any right to. Follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014, CastellaniContent.com to find everything we post. All that fun stuff is there. I think we're in a good place with our content. TikTok's growing. Platforms are growing. Time is passing. Wounds are healing. That's all good. Synergy. Bring it all together. All right. Appreciate you guys. Stay civil out there. Love you to death. Peace and happiness.